So as I mentioned, thank you everyone for joining us today. Now, just to bring everyone up to speed about crowdfunding and what that actually is and what that entails, Crowdfunder UK has been around for about 10 years now. We're one of the UK's leading rewards-based crowdfunding platforms. Now, this might be something which is a little bit different to what you're used to when it comes to online fundraising. There are lots of different things that you can do with Crowdfunder, and we'll look at those in a bit more detail later. But just to explain what rewards-based crowdfunding is, essentially it's giving something in kind for a return for a financial contribution. So that could be a product or a service. It could be something as simple as a social media shout out. And that is something that you would be giving back to your supporters by way of a thank you. We'll look at some examples of rewards, and we'll speak to Chris about his campaign as well and the types of rewards that they were able to offer. It's a really lovely way to incentivize people's giving. It makes them feel great that they've kind of got something for their donation or for their money. And it's also a really lovely way for you to connect with the community around you, and also to give something back. It's quite hard, we find, for people to kind of go out there and ask for money, especially during, the current climate and things. It's a difficult ask people find. However, being able to offer some kind of reward to those supporters can make those conversations a little bit easier. Also asking for people to potentially contribute a reward, maybe that's a local business or a local member of the community, that can be a really lovely way for them to support your campaign, get behind you, and you can really build upon that kind of cross promotion. It's mutually beneficial, essentially, to be able to promote a local business that's helped you out by offering maybe a service or a product, and for them to get a new customer base of people that are kind of claiming that reward from your campaign. So some really exciting different things that you can do via the crowdfunding platform. I want to touch on a little bit some of those additional benefits that we know are really important when it comes to running things like a crowdfunding campaign, and can be really beneficial for sports clubs in particular. So when you launch a crowdfunder, it's going to really help to build confidence in your own idea. You're going to see if there's an appetite for what you're trying to do. So whether that's with your club members, or whether that's also with the surrounding community as well, it will give you a chance to really go and speak to people and see if what you're raising money for is actually needed. And if not, what else is it that they're looking for? Get some feedback, build that validation. Can also really help to build awareness around not only your project, but the club itself. So you will create a buzz around your idea. People will be excited to see it come to fruition, and you may well get noticed by a wider audience. And by a wider audience, we mean beyond your existing club members, beyond that kind of core network that you deal with in the day-to-day. We will give you the tools and the resources necessary to really be able to promote your club and promote your crowdfunder to that wider audience, and build that network of a crowd around what you're doing. Now, everybody that does donate or claim a reward from your crowdfunding campaign will automatically become one of your advocates. We here at Crowdfunder are advocates for lots of different projects that come through the platform. We have claimed rewards. We then go on to shout about these wonderful projects, to our friends and families. And that will happen for all of your supporters as well. They will organically spread the message on your behalf by wanting to be a part of this journey with you. That's why it's so important to build an engaged audience. And the way you do that is by using your crowdfunding project page to be able to do things like post updates to your supporters. That's a really lovely way to keep in contact with them and allow them to feel part of this journey with you. You can then go on to make some really meaningful connections. We often see, especially with sports clubs, that some of those connections could be from local suppliers maybe, who have seen the crowdfunding campaign and thought, actually, we want to get behind you. We can actually help you to redevelop your club changing rooms or clubhouse or whatever it might be. And they've actually built a kind of again, mutually beneficial kind of working relationship going forward. That might be with different community organisations, schools, colleges, different sports clubs in the areas. Can be a great way to kind of put your message out there in a way that is very visible, very engaging, that you wouldn't necessarily get an opportunity to do in any other way of kind of getting that message across. It's very much putting your personality out there as a club, and that does really resonate with people. We have lots of advice, we have lots of resources on hand to get you crowdfunding successfully, and a lot of the skills that you'll learn through the process are really transferable skills that you can use in different areas of the club or different areas of your general life as well. So things like, you know, promoting effectively, networking, making sure that you're creating engaging content, going out there and having that kind of self-confidence to promote and talk about what you're doing. Lots of different things that we can help you with. Engaging with the press as well, which might be something that doesn't necessarily come to all of you naturally, or social media promotion might be a little bit daunting, but we have lots of advice on how to do that effectively. And of course, why all of you are here today, I imagine, is the extra funding opportunity that we have available. So we work with Sport England, as you will all know, as well as lots of different national and regional partners across the UK. So depending on where you are and what you're raising money for, and of course your kind of organisational setup, if you fit the eligibility criteria for any of our extra funding or our match funding, you can apply for that via your crowdfunding campaign page through your dashboard, and you can receive multiple pots of money if you are eligible. So it can be a really exciting boost to your fundraising efforts. And Nadine's here to talk through all of the wonderful opportunity from Sport England. Now, we know that crowdfunding for sports works incredibly well, and there's a few different reasons for that. You tick lots of the boxes for being good crowdfunding campaigns. The first being that you need to have a crowd. There needs to be a group of people around you that you can tap into, that you can bring on board, that already have potentially some kind of invested interest in what you're doing. You have that as a sports club. You have your members, you have the families and friends of those members. Also, we all know how important that sports clubs are within their local communities. Quite often they are very pivotal in their local communities. So you will have already existing relationships with lots of different areas and lots of different networks within your community. So you have that in hand already, which is perfect. The second really good reason is generally you're all quite competitive, hence why you're involved with sport. And that can be a really good driving force and a motivator to kind of spur you on to success. You might even think about creating some kind of fundraising challenge, or maybe having a day where you've got different elements of the club. So you might have a few different teams and you can maybe pit them against one another to see who could raise the most money, who could bring in the most supporters. And maybe you would even incentivize that with some kind of prize for the overall kind of standout fundraiser. You can even have people fundraising on your behalf, which is something that we call a multiplier project, and we'll look at that a little bit later. But all these different kind of tools and things that you can use on the platform really do work well for sports clubs, because naturally you have that crowd around you and you have that drive as kind of competitive sports people behind you. So that all works in your favor. Just to say as well, you would have seen on that slide a whole variety of different sports, and we've seen pretty much everything and anything come through the platform over the years. Everything from korfball to figure skating, swimming, cricket, rugby, you name it. The chances are somebody has already crowdfunded for that particular sport. So do take a look at the website and kind of glean some inspiration from projects that have come before you as well. Just very quickly, just looking at our impact, these numbers are going to be a little bit greater now as well, that we're going into 2024. But we can see that over or more than £8.4 million of extra funding from our sports partners has now been distributed to those sports clubs fundraising through our platform. We've seen more than 4,300 projects come through the platform, and probably way more than 300,000 supporters now actually donating and pledging on those projects. We've seen more than £26 million be raised for sports clubs specifically on our platform. So some big numbers there. We're seeing it rise in popularity, which is great because there's just even more wealth of knowledge and inspiration on the platform for you to really be able to put together an engaging campaign and be successful. Okay, now somebody who's got all of the information that you need about the wonderful Active Together match fund, our extra funding opportunity, is Nadine from Sport England. Hi Nadine, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Zoe. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Are you happy to talk through the fund? I'll pop it onto the next slide so we can have a little look as well.
Perfect, thank you. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully you'll pick up some invaluable tips on running a successful crowdfunder campaign and also learn how to access our Active Together funds that we have available through the Crowdfunder platform. So our Active Together fund, we launched this back in May 2020 in response to the COVID pandemic, but over the years it has evolved to support lots of different things. So when clubs and organizations were getting back to activity from the pandemic, it supported that return to activity. It can also support adverse weather, so flood relief campaigns. And more recently, it's been a way to help support the cost of living and energy crises that are going on at the moment. The key focus of this fund is recovery, reinvention, and building resilience. So typical projects under this fund could look at essential works that need to be done, general maintenance. It can help with revenue costs like equipment needs, or also any capital needs that you might have. So for example, if you've got a court that needs to be resurfaced, or you're looking to make some improvements to your facilities, that could be covered under this fund as well, providing it links back to that fund criteria. So through Active Together, we have supported over 800 campaigns from a wide range of sports. So from rugby to cricket to more unique niche sports like lacrosse and korfball. We understand for many of you that this is probably your first time crowdfunding or embarking on something like this before. So together with Crowdfunder, we have created lots of wraparound support and resources. So do definitely tap into this when you can. With Active Together, there is match funding of up to 50% available to a maximum value of £10,000, and it is available across England. What I'll also do as well, I'll just give you a few tips for the kind of application process. So with our fund, I would suggest that you get your page as ready as it can be. So make sure you've got lots of engaging text on your page. Make sure it informs your crowd of what your project is and why you're crowdfunding, but also make it visually engaging for your crowd. So include things like bullet points and bold text, so the really important bits of information stand out and your crowd can immediately go to your page and can read everything really clearly. Do also try to include some images. So it's really nice to have pictures of your members or your local community, so your crowd can see who this campaign is going to benefit. And also if it is the case that you're crowdfunding for something like facility improvement, then do sort of include some before pictures, so it's really clear why you're crowdfunding and your crowd can see the need for your campaign and hopefully support it. And as Zoe mentioned, we do support rewards-based crowdfunding, so do try to get some rewards on your page. So things that you can offer yourself that will help sort of encourage your community to get involved with your club or your sport. So things like taster sessions or discounted membership are really nice things to have on there. And also, Zoe will get into this in a bit more detail later, but things from local businesses like takeaway vouchers and salon vouchers, they're really good for sort of engaging people and encouraging them to donate to your campaign. So do try to include things like that as well. So if you can get your page with those things on it, then try to apply to us before you go live with your campaign, as our team here will likely have some further suggestions for you, and it's a lot easier to action things when your page is in draft form before you go live. What I would also suggest as well, we tend to contact you with the email address that you put down on the application form, so do monitor the inbox and also the junk box of that email address so you don't miss any important correspondence from us. And finally, do try to put together a team to work on this crowdfunder campaign if you can, because crowdfunding can be quite time and labor intensive. So it's really good to spread the responsibility across a team and not to leave it to one individual. I'll now hand back over to Zoe because she's got lots more information to share.
Thank you, Nadine. So much great info from you there as well about the fund. We actually did have a question come in throughout that part. So in terms of potentially what the money could go towards, we've had a question about building toilets. I know kind of capital costs is something that comes up a lot, and refurbishment costs for sports clubs. Would the Active Together Fund potentially cover this type of cost?
Absolutely, providing that the campaign sort of links back to that fund focus of recovery, reinvention and building resilience. But definitely we've supported projects like that through Active Together, so yeah.
Amazing, thank you so much. And just a reminder, if anybody does have any questions for Nadine about the fund in particular, or the mechanics of kind of working with Sport England and applying, then please do pop those questions into the chat box. Nadine, you'll be with us for the Q&A at the end of the session as well, won't you?
Absolutely.
Fab. Okay, we'll see you in a little bit. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so Nadine talked you through the Active Together Fund there. I just want to go through a little bit of information on how it actually works in terms of securing that extra funding. So as Nadine mentioned, it's a really good idea to apply for any of the funds, but obviously primarily for the Sport England Fund whilst you are in draft mode. What we recommend is that you've put the planning and the time in place to get that page really highly engaging. You're confident with it, you're pretty much ready to go live. You've secured some really interesting rewards from your community and also from the club itself, such as merchandise or taster sessions. Maybe you're going to have a community open day and people can buy a ticket to that via the crowdfunder and come along, try your sport, experience what it's like to be part of that club. All sorts of wonderful ideas that you can, research and find out about through the website. But you want to make sure that that page is ready to go, however, still in draft mode. You would put in your application via your crowdfunding dashboard, so via your campaign page. That would be sent off to Sport England, and they are incredibly reactive to those applications. You will hear back from them very quickly. It's normally only a couple of days. You may well find that you get approved straight away, which is really exciting. However, you may well find that you are declined in the first instance, and that's okay. It's not necessarily a no. Nadine did mention there that Sport England will work with you in order to make sure that if your project and your club is something that hits the eligibility and something that they are happy to support, however, your campaign page maybe needs a little bit of work, or they'd like to see a wider variety of rewards on there, they will work with you, as will Crowdfunder, to give you kind of a little bit more time, help you to go back out there and bring in those different rewards, or maybe add some more information to the page. Maybe it needs some more images and visuals to engage with your supporters. They know what they're doing. They've been working with us now for a good few years, and they know what works when it comes to sports clubs and how to engage their crowds. That is why they are so kind of on it when it comes to being reactive to your applications as well and supporting you. So do listen to what they are saying in their feedback, and you're more than welcome to reach out to us as well. We can help you too. So you've put in your application, you've been approved. You will then go on to launch your crowdfunding campaign. So you're going to go live with your project on our website. Now, when you go live with a project, there is a slight misconception that all of a sudden people will kind of find your project and start donating to your project, strangers and people that just stumble upon it by chance. The way that it really does work is that you will need to share that link with your crowd to actually bring the traffic to your project page in order to donate. And one thing that we always recommend doing is having some supporters lined up ahead of going live so that you can go straight back out to them and say, you know, you said you were going to promise to donate to our crowdfunder. It's live now. Now's the time to put your money onto the page. That way, you've built a small amount of support already before you then start promoting it to a wider audience. That will really help to build momentum. You'll be reaching out to your crowd and bringing in donations. You will need to reach 25% of your initial target. So your target is the amount of money that you decide you need to raise in order to make your project happen. You will have to raise 25% of that target by a required amount of supporters. And you can see that in the table on this slide. Depending on how much you're raising, you will be required to have individual supporters donating to your page in order to unlock the pledge from Sport England. So let's say you needed to raise £10,000 for your project. You'd raise 25% of that yourselves from at least 50 individual supporters. So that's where you're really going out there and talking to your club members, your friends, your family, your local community to bring in those individual donations. You might even have a few people fundraising on your behalf, which is an exciting way to reach those milestones. And once you've hit that, your 25% from your required supporters, you will see a pledge from Sport England land on your page. All of a sudden, the amount you raise will shoot up by the pledge amount, which is really exciting. You'll be that much closer to reaching your target. And you'll also have a banner on your page to say that Sport England has supported you. The way that we do it this way is it's a really exciting way to then re-engage with your supporters. So to go back out to your crowd and say, look, we've got this pledge from Sport England. We need to keep raising the money in order to secure this money from Sport England. So you need to secure your target. So you would carry on crowdfunding until you've reached 100% of your target. Once you've done that, everything you raise today is completely secure. You will receive a payout of money from your crowd, and you will also receive in a second transaction a payout from Sport England. There's a few steps of due diligence to complete in order to receive that payout from Sport England, and that can be done at any point after your approval for the extra funding. And it's things like uploading some documentation to kind of verify that the club is who they say they are, for example. Fairly straightforward, can all be done digitally through your crowdfunding campaign page, but something to bear in mind to try and complete if you can before the close of your campaign, and that will just speed up that payout process. Now, if you reach 100% of your target and you still have some time live on your campaign, you still could be raising money, you can absolutely set something we call a stretch target, which is an additional goal for your supporters to reach for. So let's go back to the project needing £10,000 in order to make their idea happen. Maybe they're refurbing the clubhouse and they need £10,000 to do that. Maybe if they were to raise £15,000 overall, they'd not only be able to refurb the clubhouse, but they'd also be able to start thinking about, I don't know, redeveloping the car park. Let's say the car park has got lots of potholes and things that they need to address. They don't want to include it in the initial raise because actually they're focusing on the clubhouse. But if they were to raise any more, that would just help them to do additional elements of really revamping the whole of the club itself. So that's where they'd set a stretch target, and they can carry on raising money until the project closes. It's good to have that additional goal to aim for if you've got a bit of time live, rather than people thinking, okay, they've hit their target, that's all they need, so we'll kind of disengage from that. There's always things that you could be raising money for above and beyond that initial project raise. It's kind of the icing on the cake, if you like, and do use that stretch target function if you find that you have a bit of extra time live on your campaign. I just wanted to bring your attention as well to Sport Wales. So depending on where you are in the country, you may well be across the border there in Wales. We do work with Sport Wales for their A Place for Sport fund, where you could receive up to £15,000 or 50% match funding towards your project. Much like Sport England, they're looking to support community organisations that are looking to create or redevelop, maybe enhance their sports facilities. And of course, it does need to benefit the community overall. Okay, I mentioned about being matched with extra funding partners. So I just want to bring your attention to how that kind of works throughout the mechanics of our platform. Once you sign up to crowdfunder.co.uk, it's a free account that you have with us, and you would start inputting in your information, letting us know kind of who you are as a club, whereabouts in the country you are. You might start telling us your story about your project idea. You'll also have a whole section on extra funding. It's essentially a tick box exercise. You do need to tick this box highlighted to allow us to share your project details with our funding partners, such as Sport England. And then you'll go on to let us know who's going to benefit from your project potentially, the demographic of the community that you're going to be working with, and also those project aims. So there'll be options on there such as increasing physical activity. That, of course, is going to be a big tick for all of you here today. But there might be things like tackling isolation, increasing mental well-being, all those wonderful knock-on effects that you know happen as part of taking part in sport. So do make sure you tick as many of those as are relevant. And then our computer system will match you with all of the relevant match funding partners that we work with that may want to support your project. And then you would go on to apply for those different pots of money, or it might be that you're just matched with Sport England, which is equally fab. You can apply for that through your dashboard and open up that conversation and that process with our funding partners, and hopefully get that approval straight away. This is a quick example here of what we would consider to be an ideal project page. We know what works well when it comes to sport, and we know what works well when it comes to accessing the Sport England funding. So much so that we've created a template for you to actually follow. So when you sign into Crowdfunder, if you select the sport option when you're coming through the platform, you will automatically be funneled into our kind of sports section within our platform, and therefore you'll have access to this template. It will prompt you to answer each of these different headings. What we would love for you to do is replace these headings with something which is a little bit more relevant to your club itself, but do use that format. So a nice big heading, a little bit about what the heading is actually stating, and then an image to kind of demonstrate that as well. Things like who you are as a club, bit of history, your community impact, what it is that you're raising the money for, how people can help you to do that. And then if you can, it's great to have a little video at the top as well. That is just a Vimeo or a YouTube video. People often get worried about creating videos. They find it quite nerve-wracking. One thing I will say is have fun with it. It's all about showcasing personality. It doesn't have to be highly polished. It doesn't have to be professionally shot or edited. If you have a youth team or a youth squad, get them involved if you can do. It's always great because they're always charismatic on camera. Or if you've got a larger than life character as part of the club, get them involved as well. It's just about showcasing to your potential supporters who you are as a club, and nobody does that better than the people themselves. And people like to support other people as much as they do the project idea. So in about a minute and a half, if you could let your supporters know who you are, why you're crowdfunding, what you're crowdfunding for, and how people can help you to raise the money. Just those few things in a short amount of time, nice and concise, is going to potentially really help to engage with your audience, especially if people are short on time. They could get everything they need from that video to be able to prompt them to make a donation. So definitely consider that. Here's just a few examples of some of the really interesting rewards that we've seen come through the platform. Nadine mentioned there things like takeaway vouchers and things are always great. So you've got like a fish and chips voucher here. We've got shirt sponsorship. We often see people using their kind of annual sponsorship offering, maybe having it as a slight discount for things like pitch side sponsorship for local businesses. It might be that you've got a one-off run of merchandise, which we'll talk to Chris about, which was a really exciting thing to do. It could be taster sessions, it could be salon experiences, nights away at local hotels. If you've got any great kind of leisure facilities or tourist attractions near you, then definitely go and speak to them and see maybe if you could get a family ticket or something like that. If possible, the best way to do the whole rewards offer is ideally people will be gifting these to you so that they're not at any financial cost to yourself to actually source and provide. And then when you're listing them, try and list them below the RRP. So if you do get a family ticket to the local tourist attraction, let's say that normally retails at £40, then try and list it on your crowdfunder at maybe 30. That way you're incentivizing people to actually get that ticket through your crowdfunder and not direct kind of on the high street. That's the way that you're really going to incentivize and offer a bargain to your potential supporters. It's a great way to promote local businesses too. You want to stress the fact that it's potentially mutually beneficial going forward. You will talk about them in your social media promotion, you'll include them in updates, you'll obviously then go on to thank them for their support as well. So it works both ways, and that's something to bear in mind with all of this, is it's almost kind of a community effort where lots of people are potentially going to benefit from your crowdfunding campaign as well as the club. Okay, multipliers. So multiply your crowdfunder. I've talked about this a little bit, having people to fundraise on your behalf. If you think that that's something that would work for you, by all means, you can do that. You would contact our support team and they would switch your project to a multiplier project. So you do need to request it. It doesn't happen straight away. But if you know that you've either got some brilliant people within your club that are great fundraisers, or you might want to hold an actual fundraising activity or a day, you can see here that a local school got involved and somebody did a bake sale. What that would do is allow people to click a button on your page and they'll be prompted to set up their own little mini fundraising pages. They don't need to enter any of their financial details. Everything is linked back to your page. So they can raise money for you. The money they raise is automatically filtered into your total. The amount of supporters that they have will also be filtered into your total. So it's a great way to hit those milestones to secure the funding and beyond. If you want to, you can also opt to share rewards with them. So anything that's available on your page could also be accessed via these little fundraisers. It's a great way to engage people like, you know, local schools, or if you have got youth squads that might not have any disposable income, but they have the time and the capacity to fundraise on your behalf. It's definitely something that we know can work really, really well for sports clubs in particular. Okay, and so somebody who has done just what I've been talking about, all of that wonderful sourcing of rewards, running successful campaigns, engaging with their supporters in such a great way, is the wonderful Chris. Hi, Chris, from Portsmouth Force Basketball Club. That's quite a mouthful, Portsmouth Force.
Hi there.
Thank you
everyone.
so much for joining us. Thank you for waiting in the wings as well. You've been very patient.
Honestly, I was listening. I suddenly realised that there's a lot involved, but it doesn't quite feel like there's so much involved while you're going through it because of the I call it hand holding as we go through from the support network that's there. So it's no, it's great, and I'd encourage anyone on there to get involved.
It almost feels it's hard to not feel like you're bombarding people in these sessions by going and do this and do this and do this, but actually once you kind of start the process, it's quite a natural progression, isn't it? And you guys came to this, and I know we had a call the other day, and you mentioned the planning side of things was really important. But just before we get to that part, would you mind telling us a little bit about your particular project and what was the draw to actually crowdfunding to raise the money?
So we have seen, and I was listening to the bits that Nadine was talking about earlier about since COVID. So the club obviously shut down at that period of time, and we had at that time probably about 150 people that were playing each week, going from 2-3-year-olds up to 50+ year olds playing in all different teams. We had about 5 teams running there. We knew how important it was to get the club back up and running as quick as possible, but within those guidelines that we had, that in many ways feels like a lifetime ago now. So what we did, we were really talking about how we could grow the club sustainably. And whilst we talk about that, we didn't want to be able to turn down any opportunities that came to us. So in terms of growing it sustainably, we're failing, but in a positive way, because we've got more and more people playing. So we've grown the club from having 5 teams playing and about 150 people to having 350 plus people playing each week across 13 teams, and then numerous other sessions for the youngsters that I mentioned, sort of preschool age. But our goal is, how do we grow that even further? How do we take it from 350 to 500 to 1,000, whatever the demand is there? But in order to do that, there's a lot that's needed to pay for, with court time, so court hire, having the right and relevant coaches available, and also having the right support network for the coaches there. As a community club, as we become bigger, what is held so dear to our hearts and core to the values is that we don't lose that smaller type of feel. And we never want cost to be a barrier from people participating, because we know that basketball is, as a sport, second most participated in sport in the UK now, crosses so many different cultural realms, and we want everyone to be able to come in and enjoy it. So that's our goal, was to start crowdfunding in order to help us along on that journey, so that we are able to train coaches, buy the new equipment that's needed to help and support those different teams, to get us, dare I say it, future-proof.
Ooh, famous last words. You mentioned when we spoke earlier about the importance of bringing the community on that journey for you as well. And was that part of that draw with crowdfunding? Obviously, there's the access to potentially the Sport England money, but I know that that was quite an important thing for you, to make sure that it felt like a community kind of experience, and not necessarily kind of all behind closed doors.
Massively so. And we I think an element of trepidation when we first started this. Are people going to come forwards? If so, I know some will. How much will they come forwards with? And we're unsure of what the demand would be, what the success would be, because we've never done anything like this before. But we knew that we've had supportive parents, etc., but supportive businesses around the club at that time. So the elements to do with, for anyone considering this, the pre-work that you do beforehand, it's almost that classic 80-20 rule, that most of it is going to come beforehand that people just won't see that has happened. Consider what avenues you have to talking to people, whether that's if you've got a social media presence, whether you've got a database of names, really tap into all of that. And I know when we did start the fundraising process, what I think it was you that said, Zoe, it was about having a few people teed up. And we absolutely did that. And we did it across a few of the different rewards that we had on the campaign, so that it was able to show that we really started the campaign very quickly.
Yeah, it is. It's really important. It kind of shows that kind of credibility straight off the bat, doesn't it? If you can kind of showcase to people that, look, we've already got some support, that just builds traction. And then especially once you get that Sport England pledge on there, it's like, oh, look, Sport England are interested too. And then suddenly the motivation ramps up. How did you find the application process for Sport England?
Phenomenally helpful. So going through, and I don't urge people to don't try and rush it, set yourself some time, and I'm talking sort of 2, 3, 4 hours, so I'm not talking days and days, but set yourself that time to get the page set up accurately, to be a true reflection of what you're after. once you put it in, and so the experience that I had, I was just reflecting on earlier. So initially, we weren't rejected from it, but Sport England were brilliantly helpful, coming back to me and telling me that on the reward side, I needed some at a slightly lower value contained within there. So I was able to go away and find a few other helpful people that were able to donate some bits that are at the lower price. We were going in, our amounts that we had on there ranged from, I think it was down to, I think our lowest was nearly a pound or a fiver or something like that for a local skate park that was donating vouchers for there. And then we went all the way up to if people wanted to sponsor one of the team's kits, which was 500 quid. And a whole load of things that sat in the middle of that. So I didn't have many at the lower ends to begin with, at the sort of the £1, £5, £10, £20 marks. So I was able to go away, find a few of those. And then when I went back to Sport England, I was in constant dialogue with it. Was, so if you just change this bit on the setup, if you just include a few more pictures. So really, really helpful. And that hand holding, I've got no shame in admitting that, because it was invaluable, that help at the time. I'd urge anyone to really use that. And if anything, the non-rejection part that I had was probably more beneficial for me because of what it could mean longer term for the club.
Yeah, amazing. And I can't stress enough how kind of involved Sport England are with this whole process. We've worked really closely together now for a good few years, and I know how much they love seeing these projects kind of come to life and come through the platform and get supported. So definitely everybody on the call, if you think it might be suitable for you, get those applications in with a page ready to go, and start those conversations. Definitely.
I guess just to add on that a little bit, Zoe, what they were really good at as well is partway through the campaign that we've all said of, like, you tee people up beforehand, but as you're going through it, Matthew, who I worked with or alongside there, he was very good at prompting me. Go, Chris, another update now. Go ahead with that. And yeah.
Good. And sometimes you just need that, don't you? That kind of person in the know that's seen this happen and seen people get to success and go, now's a great time to do this next step. You saw some incredible rewards, and I've shared actually a link to your project. It will show in the resources tab, which is along the bottom of everybody's screen. You should have access to that, and I'll include it in the replay email as well. I kind of want you to stand up to show off the incredible hoodie that you created. Yay. So that was a one-off, wasn't it, for the campaign?
Yeah, so what we'd done is what we'd realised as a club is that so like I said, we got over 350 players each week, a database of just over close to 1,200 people on there, because obviously it includes kids' parents on there as well. We knew that there was a demand for merchandise, but we knew that if we were going to do it on Crowdfunder, it had to be something different to what we'd kind of dipped our toe in the water with before. So what we decided to do was go with a very bling, limited edition t-shirts, hoodies, backpacks. So having these different rewards on there. So obviously, I mean, as you were saying earlier, these were things that had a cost to us, so it wasn't true profit for us, but they were ways of attracting people to the campaign. And then as we think longer term, what's happened coming out the back of this is that others have now seen different members of teams wearing them and say, oh, Chris, can I just get one of those? And it's, well, actually, it then sows the seed for when we do another Crowdfunder campaign.
I love that. There's not an if. Then we're going to take the if out of it.
You said this the other day, yeah.
Is there any bits of advice that you would give, or maybe some of those benefits that we talked about earlier? So kind of the benefits that you might have seen as a club throughout the process, or any bits of advice you might give to people who are on the call today? And ultimately, I am going to ask you if you would do it again. And I think I know the answer, but would you be able to kind of sum those ones up for me?
Yeah, there's been huge benefits to the club. I mean, obviously, what we're here is about raising money. So there's a financial benefit to the club immediately, which is, for our goal, like I said at the beginning, is to be training more coaches, more officials, meaning that we don't have to put costs up as much as we necessarily have to, put on subsidised training sessions, etc. So there's that huge benefit to people that are in the club. There's a benefit to our donors as well. So if I just highlight one of them, a local restaurant that they gave us, people could go onto the Crowdfunder and buy a £20 restaurant voucher by donating £10. So what they've then asked us to do, the restaurant, so they donated all of that, is that they've just asked us if we would, when we send everything out, ask everybody to go on to TripAdvisor, Google reviews, Facebook sites to put those a review on for those guys. I've eaten there, it's good, so hopefully it's a good review from everybody else as well. The other donors that we've had have all gone out and they've shared the link that we put on the various Facebook sites as well. So they're able to say that they're proud to be associated with supporting the campaign because of everything that's good there. And then sort of the warm, fuzzy bits. We've had some phenomenally positive feedback that's come, and all linked in coming back to COVID, and we all experienced different emotions during that time. And some of the kids that are playing in the team, how they were and what the sort of spirit and the teams that they've done to them, and its parents have come and spoke to us. It was without going on too much, it's quite emotional at times, and to be able to pass that on to their coaches as well, who are all doing this on a voluntary basis. It's phenomenal what goes on with all these volunteers, which would include people on the call here as well.
Amazing.
And that's something that just can't be measured.
No, definitely. And it's kind of by opening up the doors, if you like, to the club in that way, by kind of having it, you know, the campaign out there, people can leave comments of support, but it might just prompt them to share those stories with you, whereas they might not have done that in a different forum. It's quite it can be quite an emotional journey, can't it, I think? And would you ultimately do it again, do you think?
It's addictive. Yeah, I would. I'd even had, when I go and pick my son up from school, Dad, what's the campaign up to now? Knowing how many times I'd have checked it each day. So yes, and what I'll do is I'll leave my email address in the chat if you like, and so if anybody wants to use me as a sounding board for anything, I'm more than happy to do that.
Thank you so much. That's so generous. Are you okay to stick with us for the last little section as well? Because I've seen lots of questions coming through the chat box. If anyone has a question specifically for Chris, then please do pop that into either the Q&A or the chat, and we'll bring those up in just a moment. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chris, and we will see you hopefully in a few moments' time. Thank you. Such a great project there. I will, as I mentioned, make sure I share that with you all as well, so you can go and have a look at that in your own time if you've not been able to access it through the resource tab. I've put the link to the extra funding opportunities that we have too into that resource tab for you to take a look at. Just to let you know the kind of support that we do have available for you. So this is direct from Crowdfunder. That's also on top of that wonderful relationship with Sport England and the advice that you will get from them as well. So we have webinars such as this. We run regular drop-in sessions as well. You can come and join a Zoom room and come and talk to us. You can share your experiences. We can have some peer-to-peer support as well. So it's essentially project owners and a member of Crowdfunder asking questions about their projects. So it can be some really great peer learning in those sessions. We've got some brilliant online learning guides. We have our wonderful knowledge hub, which is full of all sorts of amazing resources to help you do every stage of your crowdfunding campaign. Tailored email advice specifically for sports clubs when you sign up to the platform. A wonderful customer support team who are on hand to help, and they have written the help centre. So most of the issues that you have or questions that you might have will have answers and troubleshooting guides in that help centre. So do check that first. And then your live project dashboard, which is where you can manage every single aspect of your campaign. This is a screenshot of our brilliant Learn platform. So I will share a link to that as well in the follow-up email. If you work your way through this, again, free to access, it just walks you through how to plan, create and run a successful campaign specifically for sports. And that brings us nicely to our Q&A session. So if I could please invite back onto the screen Nadine and Chris. Thank you so much. We've had some great questions coming through. I am conscious of time, so I might try and kind of group some of these together. So Nadine, in regards to the extra funding, this is quite a key one. So what happens if we don't reach the 100% target? Will Sport England release the pledge they made, or will it be rejected or refunded, I guess?
Yeah, so if we support a campaign, obviously we'll do all we can to ensure that you do reach your target and you don't fail. But if it is the case that you don't reach your target, then unfortunately our pledge will fall away from your campaign.
Brilliant, thank you. And just to reiterate about those milestones, so it's one pledge. So ultimately you hit that first milestone, whatever that might look like, depending on your target that you need to raise. You hit that 25% from the required amount of supporters, and you will receive the lump sum of the pledge from Sport England. That will then sit in your campaign, and you will go on to crowdfund to raise 100% and secure all of that. So it's not two separate payments, it's the one pledge, but it's kind of in a holding account, if you like, until you hit 100%, and then it's secured. It will be two payments to you, is what I was saying earlier. So when you close successfully, you'll receive a payment from Crowdfunder, from your supporters, and you'll also receive that pledge from Sport England in separate transactions. That's all. Okay, and in terms of the supporter numbers, you need to hit that amount, the required supporter numbers. You can go over it. We always want you to have lots of supporters, absolutely, but just to be mindful that to release that pledge from Sport England, you have to hit that number at least. The more supporters, the better. We know that the campaigns that have got lots of supporters normally giving a smaller amount can be really, really successful, because you're communicating with the majority of your community by doing it that way. Let me see what else has come through. If a project or a club has been awarded grants, can these be paid into the crowdfunding campaign? From a crowdfunding standpoint, absolutely. There's no issue with filtering in money from businesses or grants, as long as it's during the period of your crowdfunding campaign. Nadine, in terms of it affecting any match funding, what's Sport England's take on that?
Yeah, so as you said, Zoe, it shouldn't be retrospective. If the grant has come in for the purpose of your crowdfunder campaign and during your campaign, we can consider it. Depending on the amount, we may advise what you add to your campaign and what you perhaps keep offline. So it is the case, if you have received a large grant, it might be better to keep some of it offline and perhaps adjust your crowdfunder total. So you go for a smaller amount and then you've got the grant funding to make up the rest of it. But we do ask that you have a conversation with us beforehand if we have supported your campaign, and we can work out how to potentially add it to your campaign or advise on what to do in that situation.
Amazing, thank you. And this one in from Danielle, sorry. Will Sport England be interested in UK registered charities? And two, if they're offering funding for sports development in the Caribbean?
So for us, our match funding is for projects that benefit people living in the UK or organisations and sports clubs within the UK. So we wouldn't be able to support anything for development in the Caribbean, unfortunately. But providing that you're a not-for-profit charity, organisation, club, if there is something for people within England, then absolutely you could benefit from our match funding.
Thank you. And this one for Chris. In terms of your campaign, how did you find those conversations going out to business owners and actually sourcing those rewards?
So many, I go back to it's that pre-work, and it's telling people what you're thinking of doing, because a load of this will come as word of mouth from others on there. So the sort of skate park vouchers that I spoke about, that's somebody within the club knew somebody that owned the skate park. The restaurant vouchers came through somebody knowing somebody whose brother it was that owned them. Football tickets, we approached the local football club who have a community team. They donated a ball and they donated a couple of sets of tickets. Some of the bigger things around kit sponsorship that we had on there, those generally become a sort of slightly bigger conversation, and so you're just making sure that with any communication that you send out, that somebody has got a point of contact that they can come back to. So, for example, one of the people that came through and they were going to buy advertising boards to go up. Our men's National League games have about 350 supporters. They were going to buy advertising boards for that. They called me about it and said, well, actually, we'll buy 2 of the boards. Chris, is there a discount for that? And I said, well, actually, rather than there being a discount, we could put your logo on the ladies' team's kit as well, if you do that amount there. And that conversation just evolved from there, and they're brilliant community-focused people.
Amazing. Sounds like you a kind of a side hustle as a salesman. I love it. You're like, well, tell you what, no, this is how it's going to work. Gives you a kind of strange sense of confidence, though, I think, being a project owner.
Yeah, and because I was fully bought into the campaign and knew the difference that it would make to everybody if we achieved this amount. So we did. I saw one of the questions earlier about with the bigger sponsors to go in early or later. We took the approach, whether it's right or wrong, is because we viewed it as two targets that we had that have been highlighted. It's the number of people and it's the amount to raise. So we took the approach of having more people buying smaller amounts, as in merchandise to begin with, and then you get that initial huge spike. And then just as the daily amounts don't become so big, there's another comeback in with a larger amount.
Amazing. That leads really nicely. We might run over by a couple of minutes, guys. Sorry, I've just noticed that we are almost at the wire, but I do want to cover off Abby's questions. So in terms of having kind of a few larger donors, in terms of supporters, I'm assuming, so they're going to financially contribute to your page. In terms of timings, one thing I will say is if you have been accepted for the Sport England funding, communicate that with them, because what you don't want to happen is for a huge amount of money to potentially take you over a milestone or take you over a target, especially if it's coming through the club. Sometimes we do find that kind of large donors will actually donate to the club itself as opposed to a crowdfunder. If they can donate to the crowdfunder, please do encourage them to do so. Anybody that has the ability to digitally donate, make sure they're doing it to the crowdfunder for kind of transparency. And it looks great if it's coming from them directly. If you've got people kind of sat in the background that are happy to put larger amounts on, just think about that timing. You want it to not discourage those smaller amounts coming in as well from the larger groups of people, and utilize them as motivation. So maybe, as Chris mentioned there, maybe as it starts to kind of dip, and it will do, you'll get lots of interest at the beginning. It will start to kind of dip. It's a bit of a U shape. And the idea is you would use things like the Sport England pledge landing on your page to kind of counteract that dip. Or it might be that you've got somebody who has a large amount of money that they can support your club with. Maybe that's the time then to try and counteract the dip. So you end up with a nice level or even a continuous kind of spike, a continuous gradient, towards kind of the target. So each campaign is different. If you can use them to essentially, when you're getting a delay in those funds coming in, whether people are getting slightly disengaged because it's been running for a little while, that's a great time to have a larger donation come on, because then you can shout about it and re-engage people, I guess is what I'm trying to say in a nutshell. But just be mindful of how that might affect Sport England pledge coming onto your page. If it is lots of big donations, we would like to see a variety of smaller donations and big supporter numbers too, wherever possible. Does anybody have any final questions that they would like answering before we call time? I think that is all for today. So all that remains is to thank Nadine and to thank Chris for your time today. We have got the direct email address for Sport England on the screen now. If anybody has any questions regarding the fund or their particular project idea to see if it might be eligible, more than welcome to contact them. Chris, you popped your very helpful of you. If anyone's got any direct questions for Chris, do feel free to contact him outside of this session, or come along to a drop-in. If you've got any questions off the back of today, do feel free to book onto a free drop-in session and ask specific questions about your potential campaign. But thank you so much for joining us, and thank you again, Nadine and Chris, and we wish you all the best with your campaign. So thank you for joining us.
Best of luck, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.